My name is Taryn Folks. I serve on our Landgate Client Success team, where I support our partners and our collaborative efforts together. So this is one of our real estate and more property-focused educational webinars. We hold these weekly, sometimes bi-weekly. So if you want to hear about any other resources that can assist your property, solar, wind, mining, oil and gas, any other types of resources and how you can generate revenue from your property, please visit the link that Jordan Ellis here is going to post in our chat. So we're really excited today, though, to focus on an innovative carbon reforestation partnership opportunity and what carbon credit options mean for you as the landowner interested in reforested landscapes. So with that, I'm pleased to introduce and be joined by Living Carbon. Living Carbon is dedicated to reforesting land throughout the Appalachians and the Southeast, where we'll focus a lot of our webinar today. And then to further discuss the impacts of carbon credits and what monetizing your properties mean, we have our very own president and co-founder, Craig Kaiser here, who oversees our relationships with our landowners, real estate agents, and professionals alike. And then together, we're going to explore how reforestation projects can align with your goals, for how they provide mutual benefits and what that means. So really excited and looking forward to discussing this opportunity with you and answering any questions that you have. So let's get started. Pass to you.
All right. Thank you, Taryn. Thanks for the introduction. And yeah, for those property owners and real estate folks that have joined some of our webinars before, you guys really are in for a treat here. Jonathan is truly an expert when it comes to carbon credits, and this is an opportunity for you to get as much information on those programs as you can, get your questions answered. If you've been in a webinar with Landgate before, you understand that these are very open type webinars. So if you have questions, feel free to email those in, or you can also submit a question in this window here. But just so folks that are on the call who are not familiar with Landgate, let me give you a quick overview, and then we're going to go ahead and let Jonathan give us the ins and outs of carbon credits and reforestation carbon credits specifically. But I'd like to introduce you to Landgate here. And what we've built here is a platform and an application for property owners, not just landowners, but any really type of property across the United States, where you can interact in a pretty unique marketplace. So everything I'm going to show you here is available through a $10 a month subscription through our Land app subscription. And you go ahead and get signed up and you get access to everything you're going to see here. But right away, you see there's a bunch of green dots on this map. These are active properties that are available for purchase across the United States. You can self-list your own properties if you'd like to sell them or monetize them. But what's unique about Landgate is we also allow folks to host their own properties to generate revenue. And that's why a lot of you are probably in the call today, trying to figure out a way to monetize a certain type of asset on your property, today specifically carbon credits. But we allow a platform for landowners, property owners across the United States to post listings to try to generate revenue either from solar, wind, carbon credits, oil and gas, mining, battery storage, any types of these resources. You can post a listing out on Landgate. It's your listing. There's no fee, no commission. And folks just like Jonathan who are interested in developing those resources find your listing and reach out to you directly. So it is a unique marketplace. But then along with that, we do offer a platform that allows you to really truly understand the resource potential of your property. So I'm just going to click on a piece of property here, and it's going to load what we have calculated specific indexes that only Landgate offers. So you're going to quickly see, if I was Mr. Richard Hershey, I'm going to see a relative 0 to 100 score for all of these different types of resources, for land, solar energy, wind energy, EV charging, carbon credits. And it doesn't just give me the index. When I click on a piece of property, you're going to see the actual data underlying the valuations and the indexes populated on the screen. So it's going to break down my piece of property, how many different types of acres I have of each land use type, If I'm interested in solar energy, I can click on solar energy and you can see all of the critical solar information as far as transmission lines, distribution lines, substations. I can actually see a breakdown of my property, how many acres I have of certain types of exclusion zones, what I can estimate, what my estimate would be for leasing that property. Same thing for EV charging, carbon credits, minerals, and then just some really cool overall property features. What types of amenities are nearby the property? What types of trees you have? How much carbon credits are associated with those trees? For soil type, same thing, what type of soil you have on your property. So it's a really, really useful tool to find out what your property consists of and all of these different resources where you could have some additional value, or even more importantly, why a lot of landowners, property owners, and real estate professionals use Landgate. We've generated exclusive risk factors on every piece of property as far as what is 0 to 100 score again, what type of contamination risk you have from oil and gas, industrial, electricity blackouts, really unique type of risks on every piece of property that you can only find on Landgate. So again, that's the only plug we'll do for Landgate. Go there, do some research on a property that you own, property that you might be wanting to purchase, wanting to sell, and find out what you have there. But the reason why you are all here today is to learn about reforestation carbon credits. And Jonathan has a really nice presentation that he's put together that he can go through. Again, if you have questions, go ahead and email those in. We'll try to get those answered live on this webinar. And then also, Jonathan, a lot of landowners use Landgate. They call us and they have questions specifically about carbon credits. Before you get into your presentation, can you give us a really high level understanding, just as basic as it can get, what is a carbon credit in relation to a property owner or a landowner that might be on this call?
Yeah, happy to do that. Craig and the Landgate team, can't thank you guys enough for having me and having Living Carbon on to talk about our program. And thank you too to everybody who's joined on. I'm really eager to talk to you and hear your questions. Yeah, at its simplest nature, a carbon credit is a certificate that a ton of carbon has been either sequestered or avoided from entering the atmosphere. And there are a large number of ways to do this. And as a result, there are a ton of different project types. So I'm talking about one specific project type today that we work on, which is reforestation. As many of you probably know, trees, as they grow and through the photosynthetic process, sequester carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and can counteract some of the emissions that are going on. So that's valuable to companies that have net zero goals. If you're like me, you probably can't turn on the TV without seeing an ad from some company that's touting their new, zero emissions or net zero emissions by 2030, or targets like that have become really, really common, especially among some of the Fortune 500 companies and other large corporate entities out there, as well as some governments that have signed things like the Paris Accord that require emissions to be cut by a certain amount by a certain date. So, there are a lot of things that companies, that the governments, the different entities can do to reduce the emissions of carbon that they're putting into the atmosphere. But some emissions, there's either not the technology or not a financially feasible solution to reduce. And so for some of these hard to abate emissions, entities with net zero goals will turn to carbon credits to offset those emissions. That may mean paying to plant a forest in one place. It may mean paying to protect a forest in another place. There are a lot of different ways to do this. So to me, I've worked my entire career in private lands forestry and conservation, and I see this growing carbon market as a great opportunity for landowners, especially if it aligns with your goals for managing the property. It's really never been a better time to own land because it's now being valued in a number of different ways that didn't exist 10, 20 years ago. So eager to have a conversation with you guys today and help y'all kind of make sense of this carbon market thing.
Awesome. Well, you put together a great presentation. Go ahead and feel free to share that. And as Jonathan is going through the slides here, if you have questions, again, feel free to send those in. We'll try to get them answered as quick as we can.
Good deal. Well, give me a shout if you can't see my slides, but otherwise I'm going to power on ahead. Yeah, so I work for Living Carbon. We're a young company, only been around 5 or 6 years here, and um, we're a public benefit company with a mission to rebalance the carbon cycle of our globe. So one of the ways we do that is by planting trees, and we work on tree genetics with a lot of great scientists and biotech experts. And I'm going to get into that a little bit more later, and I'm sure get a lot of questions about it. But what I do is work directly with landowners to create partnerships to reforest their land. So if you are a landowner and you're interested in having trees where there aren't currently trees on your property, I'm here to work with you and help you make that happen. So good place to start is who's eligible for our program. You can see all these shaded states here. The dark blue is where we started, and the light blue is where we've expanded to more recently. But everybody who's in these states and meets the criteria with their property is eligible, and we are more than happy to work with you. So as you can see, we started with a focus in Central Appalachia. I'm based in Virginia. Spent a lot of time in West Virginia growing up, and this area is very close to my heart, and we've got a lot of staff based in this area. We've really honed in on reclaimed and abandoned mine lands as kind of the biggest area of opportunity for reforestation, but we will also work with folks who have ag fields, pastures, or just kind of fallow land that's sitting there with a lot of potential to grow something. So yeah, first of all, if you're in one of these states, great, you're in the right place. We're eager to be talking with you. We work with private landowners. We can work with corporate landowners as well as NGOs. So we've worked with land trusts. We've worked with private individuals. We've worked with large and small landowners, and basically everything in between. It's required to generate carbon credits that your land has not previously been forested for the last 10 years. So we can plant on anything that has been in a different land use. One question we get a lot is, I'm thinking about harvesting my timber. Will you all pay me to replant it? And unfortunately, that's not how the methodologies that govern the carbon credit market work. So while that's great, management, that's something we're gonna have to find a different program for you to do. But yeah, if you've been non-forested for 10 plus years, then that's definitely a good project. We like to look for 300 acres that are plantable at a minimum for projects. And the reason for this is there are pretty high fixed costs associated with the work we do. And I'm going to show you guys a little breakdown of that in a second here. But we want to work on at least that kind of size project. If you've got a neighbor who you think might want to team up with you, we're happy to work with multiple owners to kind of aggregate one bigger project. And if you're like 290 or so, I think we've got the flexibility to bring that down a little bit. So even if you're not quite at 300, I'm still happy to have a conversation with you and check out your property and do a quick assessment for you.
Jonathan, real quick there, you bring up a really good point. 300 acres that are plantable, right?
Yes.
Not total in gross, plantable. That's going to be a pretty large parcel. Like there's not a whole lot of folks in the United States that have a 300-acre parcel. You mentioned something very interesting, that you could partner or team up with some of your neighbors or surrounding landowners. Is that something you have seen other landowners do before? And has your company worked with folks like that, where if me and Taryn and Jordan and Michaela say we all own 100 acres that are plantable, but we each own 100, and the economics aren't going to make sense for me to do it individually, but we've all teamed up. Has your company done things like that? And what are the kind of size ranges of those groups of property owners that you've worked with?
Yeah, we have. So there's actually a land trust in Southern Ohio that's been working with us to plant trees, and they submitted at least 3, I think maybe actually before, different properties. And so the smallest planting area on one of those was, I believe, in the 50s of acres. So that's one that we've done where we were able to kind of use the same contractors and do the work simultaneously because those sites were close together. But I'm working with a group of landowners in Pennsylvania right now, where we've got one fellow who's just kind of our team captain. He's got about 100 acres he wants to plant, but he's brought in neighbors to join in who are also looking to plant some of their land and trees. So that one's in the process, but it's going pretty good so far. And then we've got another group that's a family where it was all one ownership 2 generations ago, and now the kids and grandkids each have their own section of the land. And so we've worked with them as well to kind of combine all that into one project. And luckily that family gets along super well, and they're cooperative. So anywhere where that kind of dynamic exists, where you're down to cooperate and work together with the surrounding owners, we're happy to work with you. The thing there is we just have to make sure we're coordinating so the site activities are happening around the same time. That's what's brings those fixed costs down and allows us to work with some smaller holders.
Good. So everybody's kind of got to be on the same page, whether they're family or just neighbors, have the same expectations, same timelines, things like that. But it doesn't require enormous properties to participate in your program. Is that a decent summary?
I'd say so. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks for that clarification, Craig. I appreciate
Yep.
it. Feel free to jump in if there's ever something you want to hear more detail about. But yeah, and then one thing that is, I think, pretty great about our program is we can move pretty fast. So if you're ready to plant within the next 12 months, that's about when we want to start engaging with you. We're not one of those contracts that takes years and years to execute. In fact, we're just really starting to ramp up our engagement with landowners for the next early spring planting season. So less than 12 months is doable for us too. But yeah, there's a process that I'm going to go through here in a slide or two about how we enroll, and what time of year you need to be thinking about certain things, because planting is seasonal. So moving on ahead, here's what it looks like from a landowner's perspective. And this picture on the right here is one of those Ohio sites I was telling you about. It's pretty gnarly, as you can see, right? Really compacted soil. We got a bunch of autumn olive growing there. So what we did is we came in and did some cross ripping, as you can see, these kind of trenches, dug up that rocky soil and got it in a position where it was ready for trees to be planted. And there you can see our planting crews out there with backpacks, putting seedlings in the ground. So just a good example of what one of these projects kind of looks like on a mine land in particular. We offer annual payments. As long as you're in the program, you're receiving $40 per acre per year. That's a flat rate. It kind of de-risks any of the potential things like tree mortality that could upend a project, carbon credit sales. We kind of worry about that stuff, and just incentivize continued management of forest land, which is pretty hands off. These trees grow mostly by themselves. We cover these costs of reforestation as well. And so I think this is really one of the big value adds we bring in addition to the annual payments, because this can be really expensive, especially on a degraded site like the one in this picture, where pretty intensive site preparation is required. We also cover the planning costs. We have a professional forester with a ton of experience on our team, and he'll oversee contractors and line those up. We also bring in the seedling stock and the planting crews. So all that can be really expensive. If you try to do it on your own, as you can see, can be anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000 per acre. We've seen one site where it could even be up to $5,000 per acre that we're footing the bill for. But we're happy to do that because this is really core to our business to get trees planted in partnership with you on your property. Then another really great value add here is, as a landowner, you retain the timber rights. So that once the contract is up, you're free to do what you want with those trees. We plant commercially valuable species. We plant in places that have active timber markets. So, the contract isn't usually long enough if you're talking about Appalachian hardwoods to grow to, saw log age, but we're putting valuable timber on the property that you're free to monetize down the road if that's aligned with your goals. And these are long-term partnerships. We sign contracts for 40 years. That is, that follows the methodologies. There's not really much out there that's shorter. There's nothing I know that's shorter for reforestation. But like I said, you're probably not harvesting, oaks at 40 years, for example, anyway. So it's pretty well aligned with, how at least how long you'd want to grow these trees to maturity before thinking about a harvest. And in that 40-year period, you can also do some thinning with in consultation with us. So there may be opportunities earlier than that as well.
Jonathan, before you move on from this slide, a quick question. A lot of landowners, property owners who call into Landgate and are interested in programs similar to this, they want to know what types of decisions can they make on what's being planted there. What type of species of trees, what's the biodiversity of those trees, and what say does the landowner have, if any, of what is being planted on their property?
Definitely has a say. So we try to align the species selection to whatever goals the landowner has for their property. And if you don't know what kind of trees you want, we can give you some options as well. But we've worked with people in different states where different trees grow better than others, and so we have a number of nursery partners, and we've got the flexibility to um, select a pretty wide variety of different trees to make a part of these plantings. And we'll try to align those with your goals for the land. So if you want really, high value timber production, we'll favor some of those species that are valuable on the market. If you want more wildlife, we can select trees that work for that. For example, we got one landowner who we're working with in Alabama who's an avid deer hunter, and they want to see more wildlife on the property. So we're selecting a mix of mass bearing species that are going to attract deer, for years to come. So there's room within our program to kind of customize what the planting looks like, and make that align with your goals for the property, whatever those happen to be.
Very good. Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So as promised, here's our timeline slide. This is just one example. We typically plant in fall and in the spring. And the months will kind of depend on growing seasons and raining seasons and things like that. We're making sure we align these activities with what's ecologically suitable, along with what works for you as a landowner. So like I said, we're lining up for next spring right now. So this isn't exactly how it'll look, but still a useful example to show that if we can start the conversations in January, we're well on our way to a fall planting. We have a letter of intent that we send you early on. It lays out all the contract terms in a pretty concise summary, so you can really understand what it is we're talking about before we get into the more involved planning stages. We'll do a site assessment for free. We'll take a look at your property using a number of different GIS tools, similar to kind of what Craig showed there earlier that Landgate has the capability to do. And we'll, from that, be able to understand if we've got a viable carbon project or not. We may ask you for some documentation of land ownership, pretty standard, just deed and title stuff that just about anybody leasing land has to do. And we'll do the work to actually design the project and choose that seedling mix. Again, like you said, Craig, with input from the landowner. All aiming to sign a project agreement, which will initiate the actual site activities. Site prep, like I mentioned, is an important part of this. That could take a number of different forms. We work on a lot of degraded sites where we've got to do things like ripping, disking, tilling. We may have to do work to fix pH and nutrient levels on the land. Again, we cover all those costs, and we've got pros who know exactly what the land will need to support tree growth. It could be that you got a really vigorous growing site where not a whole lot of work is needed, and we're more than happy to work with you there too. All the while, we're working with our nursery partners to grow seedlings and get them prepared so that when the proper time comes, we can go ahead and plant those. And once those trees are in the ground, that's when the payments start coming in from us, and you can expect your annual payment every year. And continued support there, I think, is an important one to flag before I move on. And that's, we'll help you if you want to write a forest management plan, something or anything like that. A lot of states have a current use program for forestry where you can get taxed at a much lower rate on your property tax for growing trees. And we're really interested in helping you capitalize on that. And I think that's just another kind of side benefit to our program. So yeah, again, got the staff, got the expertise to help you kind of get on your way as a new forest owner. Here's another picture of that Ohio site. I took this one back in April when I got to go see it. This is a seedling right here. This is a year and a half old. As you can see, it's growing pretty well on a really rocky kind of beat up site that used to be a coal mine. So just another good example of how we've taken a lot of care to plant these trees, and we're getting the response we wanted, which is fantastic. We talked about kind of the diverse mix of species already. We're interested in biodiversity. We're interested in clean water and native species, and all the other important benefits we enjoy from forests. Talked about site prep already. We plant at a pretty high stocking rate. We'll plant 600, 650 trees per acre, depending on the site. That's to ensure we have vigorous growth and a forest that can withstand maybe some minor mortality events. That's pretty standard for commercial plantings. And I think one thing that's really cool, one thing I really appreciate about how we approach it is we work with local contractors, in addition to our locally based staff in the region. So, supporting small businesses and local industries, local communities that rely on forests and the forest industry is another great thing we're really proud of doing, and we'll continue to do as long as we have this program. One last thing to touch on here, like I said, we work on tree genetics. That's kind of a core part of our business. And what you see here is a photosynthesis enhanced poplar. This tree this tree on the left has been treated with genetics that allow it to grow faster and sequester carbon more efficiently. So these are two of the same age tree, and everything's the same except for this genetic enhancement. And as you can see, we've got really, really vigorous growth on the left. So we make these trees a part of the planting. They can be as little as 5% of the seedling mix. They can be as much as 25% of the seedling mix. That's up to you as a landowner. And we take great caution to make sure these trees are planted appropriately, where they're not gonna hybridize, they're not gonna spread invasively, but they're gonna be a harmonious aspect of the forest. But what they do is by sequestering carbon more rapidly, they make they generate more credits, which makes the whole project more financially lucrative and allows us to pay the annual rates we do. So I can go into more detail on these maybe in the Q&A. I can talk about it for a long time, so I don't want to take up all our time talking about tree genetics, because that's probably not necessarily the most important thing for some of you guys, but it's a really cool and unique aspect of what we do here. So yeah, last one here is just a few examples of places we've planted, and this needs updating because we've done more work this spring and have more work lined up for the fall. But you can see we've got a pretty decent spread of different areas with, again, that kind of central cluster of Central Appalachia. But again, we're eager to add more dots to this map, and if any of y'all want to be one, we're happy to have that conversation. So thank you. There's our website. There's my email. I can leave that up for a second if you want to take it down. Happy to answer any questions. Happy to review your sites. Anything you guys want to hit me up for. That's my email, and I'm fairly responsive. So happy to chat with you. And before I stop talking, I just want to thank Landgate again. It's great to be here and talking to this awesome audience, and yeah, really glad to be a partner of yours.
Absolutely. Well, you're a wealth of information. Hopefully we can tease a little bit more of that out of you. Jonathan, thank you for that wonderful presentation. Living Carbon, great company. If your property fits the description that Jonathan just described and is of interest, I would certainly recommend you reach out to him and have a conversation. While you were presenting there, Jonathan, a couple folks jumped in and they're asking about, okay, well, you guys are kind of focused more in the Appalachian region, eastern part of the country. And then what are there opportunities in California, the western part, Rocky Mountain regions? And I'm going to plug Landgate here pretty quickly. is that if you're a landowner listening and this is something, whether you're in Appalachia or the eastern part of the country, but any type of resource is something you want to generate revenue from, the easiest way to do that, rather than needing to know the exact type of carbon company or solar company or wind company or whatever it is, that's what makes our marketplace special. Is it essentially allows you to raise your hand in the pool of carbon developers or solar developers or oil and gas developers, whoever it is, and those folks will reach out to you. So you don't need to have a Rolodex of a bunch of different companies. It's an active marketplace. An enormous amount of resource companies use it. So Jonathan, as he mentioned, uses Landgate. So if you have a piece of property, or you and your neighbors are interested in this, and you post your property for leasing of carbon credits up on Landgate, it's going to go straight away to Jonathan, because Jonathan's team heavily utilizes the tool, and they take a look at the listings that go up there. So for the folks that are asking about that, how they can go ahead and get in front of different types of resource company, easiest way, create that free listing, no commission, no commitments, anything there. So I think, Taryn, you've got a question for Jonathan more specific to this reforestation type of carbon credit. So go ahead, Taryn.
Yeah, there's some few ones that have come in and also here that I have. But can you describe a little bit more, maybe from the landlord's perspective, of how are those maybe funds working, or how they can, see how they're going to be participating in this, in that validity? I think that'll help a little bit. As well as we had a question here from someone else of, how come these carbon credits, don't work for grassland? Like, why are we focusing on trees, right?
Yeah. So I'll tackle that one first. I think, so we're specialized in reforestation. And I think I saw a question in there about an existing piece of forest land too. Those are valuable sites for carbon credits as well. It's just not what we do. I think you're going to find that out here in the marketplace, which I know, some of y'all are looking for a one-stop shop. And I think Landgate is as close to that as there is, because most of us carbon project developers really specialize in just one or maybe two different project types. So there are grassland carbon providers out there. There are providers out there for projects on existing pieces of forest. We are a small young company, and we may do different types of projects in the future, but we're all about planting trees, and that's what we know how to do well. So I would encourage you, if you've got a different kind of land that's not quite fitting the criteria I laid out earlier, check out Landgate. Go find a developer that's right for exactly what you want to do on your property. I think the beauty of carbon markets is the variety that's out there of different project types. So, we want to make sure that what we're doing is aligned with your own goals for your land, because this is a long-term partnership, and we're looking to empower you to manage your land the way you want and leverage the carbon market as a tool to do that. So, make sure you're going and finding exactly what you want to do, and see if carbon can help you accomplish that.
Yeah. And then for others that I work with on my team, and then likely that you're experiencing with other landowners that maybe don't know where to start, and they might be getting different offers from, various different, either is it for mineral, are they getting, solar reaching out to them, how do you help, zero in on that alignment for them, or what makes this program maybe something that's easier for them to consider?
Yeah, so this is a great question. And I think it's one because there is such a wide variety of different opportunities in working with Landgate. I think it's definitely one I expect a lot of y'all to have. But our program, just like any other offer out there, there's pros to our program, there's pros to other offers you might see. A lot of the same land we're looking to plant trees on might be viable for a solar or wind project, or you might have either like an oil and gas or a mining opportunity. I'd say how we compare obviously with $40 per acre per year, might not be as lucrative as a solar contract, but like I said, we can act in as little as 12 months, and some of these contracts can take a long time. There's the ecosystem, the wildlife, the recreational benefits that come with growing the forest that I think are an added maybe non-monetary value or maybe a down the road monetizable value that I see a lot of our enrolled landowners saying is a reason they wanted to work with us. Um, if you like to hunt, if you have the property kind of as a retreat, it'll be nicer to have trees there than maybe something industrial or something energy generating. So, I think our program works really well for people who um, value the land for some kind of ecological or recreational purposes. And maybe want to have trees and haven't found a way to make that financially viable yet. So yeah, like I said, we want to work with people who are certain that reforestation is what they want to do. So I more than encourage you guys to check out every possible opportunity that's out there. Kick every tire. Ours is the only one of them out there. So if you go do all that diligence and decide that our program is what you want to do, then we're more than happy to have that conversation.
Yeah, there really is something for everyone.
Yeah, Jonathan, it's a very enticing program. If I'm a property owner out there and I have some land and let's say it's not yielding what I want in a crop or row crop or something like that, and I don't really know what to do with it. And just like you said, there may be other opportunities there, but I still want to utilize that piece of property. I still want to use that land. If I put solar panels on it or I put some other type of intense development, well, I might be getting compensated more for that because I don't get to use the property anymore. And I think you brought up a very good point. I can still utilize fully this piece of property, and you're actually living carbon is going to come in and actually pay for that cost to improve my property. One of the things that we typically hear from property owners, they're interested in the value proposition, whatever it could be grassland carbon, it could be changing operational practices on row crops, it could be reforestation, right? Like you said, there's different types of carbon credits. There's always conversations and questions about the term. So Sean wrote in a question here and said, he's asking, is the lease always 40 years? And at $40 per acre per year, is there anything built in tied to CPI or an escalator, things like that? So that was a question coming in there from Sean. So can you expand on that at all?
Yeah, happy to. That's a great question, Sean. I appreciate you submitting that. Every contract is 40 years. Anything less just wouldn't be viable under the rules of the carbon markets. We work with registries who set standards and they determine whether you get issued a carbon credit or not. And if you don't work with them, companies are not gonna pay for any carbon you're claiming to sequester. So we follow their rules and our contracts reflect that. So there's not really flexibility there, but we do adjust for inflation. So recognizing that 40 years today or $40 today is probably not going to be worth $40 in 40 years. We go and reassess that every year and adjust your payment accordingly.
Very good. Great answer. There's another question that came in from Mike. Mike was, and thank you for doing this, Mike, going to Landgate. Is going to create a listing and he had a question. In order to see his ratings, in order to see the indexes and the data that I was showing you before, you can see that on one piece of property for free. You can see that for one piece of property every day. You can get those analytics and you can get that data. You do have to create an account. It's free, but we need to be able to identify who is looking at that data. So you can go ahead and look at that if you want. If you don't want to see the data or the analytics or the property report for that piece of property, that's fine. You can post your listing, but you do have to create an account because we have to have a way to be able to associate that listing with yourself so that you can come back in, edit the listing, delete the listing, things like that. So in order to post a listing, you do have to create an account. That is free. If you want access to data, nationwide ownership and data analytics, things like that, then it's the land app subscription for $10 a month. So I just wanted to fill that in. And then Phil had a question there, and I'm no way I can touch this one, Jonathan. He has a question: if the land was deforested due to ash borer, does it take it out of contention like a harvest would? Please take that away as someone who knows a lot more about trees than I do.
Yeah, this is a great question. So we are we have brought this up with the standards. I know the standards who basically set the rules for what's a carbon credit, and I'm not sure if we've gotten an answer yet. That's a fantastic question that I'll need to follow up on with you. But yeah, this is emerald ash borer is causing high levels of mortality in different ash species in the east, and it's pretty rough. And so a lot of landowners are forced to do salvage harvests if they even can do that before these trees all die. So if it's fully deforested an area, that's then we could, we've been trying to make the case that we should get a waiver on that 10-year period of previous non-forest land use. It'll depend on like how much residual forest is left behind though, because typically ash is grown in a mixed stand. So if it's really cleared out an entire area, then that would probably have a case. But if there's still a lot of residual trees there, it might still count as enough forest cover that it wouldn't qualify for a reforestation project. So I'm happy to follow up with whoever asked that question about where we are with the standards on that, and what your own site conditions are like, because yeah, I agree, we need to get you some support. That's a brutal pest, and something ought to be done to help you out with that.
Taryn, do you have another question from maybe the pre-submitted questions that came
Yeah.
in?
There's another one here that's asking more on contracts, which I think is helpful a lot on this monetary stuff. Do you sell carbon credits on long-term contracts, or are they layered over time where they can go back into the market?
Yeah, I saw this. This is great. So what we've been looking at a variety of different ways of taking our credits to the market. There are a lot of credits are sold through spot transactions. So, you get issued credits, once a year. You submit your monitoring reports, and that contains data on how the trees have been growing. And based on that, the registries will issue you credits. So whenever you get an issuance, you have inventory to sell. If you think about it like, running a store. So, that's one way to sell credits, is just get them issued and then find a buyer and get those out the door. There are also offtake agreements where you can sign a deal with a company who's looking for a high volume of credits, and they pay you they pay you annually, almost like a subscription, and they get deliveries of those carbon credits. So we're exploring both. We'll probably do a bit of both, but that's how we plan to monetize these. The good news is, we're planting trees. We've got a small number of projects now, a growing number of projects now, which will lead to a growing number of carbon credits years down the road. And a lot of these reforestation sites don't actually start generating credits until year 3 to 5, I think, is typical. So, you can start getting paid in year 1, where we've got a ways to go before we can start monetizing the actual work we've put in.
And then,
Jonathan, go ahead, Taryn.
oh no, it was just like clarifying, like living carbon, your program handles that offtake and all those other things, right? And the landowner side, it's just getting that land ready for that planting and then letting the trees do the work, right?
That's right. Yeah, we've got a team kind of on our financing side and credit sales side who are really savvy and are getting really impressive prices for these carbon credits. But yeah, I'm a bit more, my expertise is more on this land side and working with you, the landowner. So if we have a conversation about your property and you want to learn more about how we're marketing these credits, how we're selling these credits, I can bring in people from my team to shed more light on that.
Good, thanks.
Jonathan, if I have a piece of property now, let's say it fits all of the requirements other than I haven't harvested the timber on it yet. I can't just go ahead and harvest it today, call you tomorrow and get into a reforestation carbon credit. So I'm sure there's some folks on the call thinking, like, okay, I've been thinking about harvesting this credit, but there has to be a period there where the land has to somewhat qualify based on the regulations as needing to be reforested. What's that time frame of how long the property has been out of either a commercial timber stand or native forest? Like, what's the period of time the land would have had to been cleared to qualify for your program?
It's 10 years. That's a
10
that's
years.
a, that's a rule consistent across a couple of different reforestation methodologies. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, so whenever we're assessing a property, one of the things we do is we look back at aerial imagery 10 years and we see what was going on this property in 2014. And if there were trees, if there's if there's a forest there, then that's unfortunately not qualifying for the type of reforestation project we're doing. And I really wanted to touch on that point early on because that's something that we get a lot of questions about. I didn't see any participants drop off when I said that, so hopefully that's not too many of y'all. But yeah, that's unfortunately that's one of the rules that we have to abide by. These carbon markets do have a lot of rules, right? There's a ton of concern and safeguards in place to address those concerns about whether the carbon impact of the projects that we're selling credits from is real, if it's actually making a difference in the atmosphere. That's something that companies that buy these credits and that regulators and the journalists are really concerned about. So we got to be on the straight and narrow and follow all the rules to a T. So unfortunately that means we lose some flexibility in certain areas, but yeah, we've done our best to work within those confines to make something that works for a lot of people.
How about the landowners? I'm calling into this webinar from the western portion of the United States, where we have to work really, really hard to get trees to grow. Which is likely why your program doesn't fit in the western portion of the U.S., where you're looking, trees just pop up like they're weeds almost, it seems like. So there could have been a situation where maybe 6 or 7 years ago, I harvested timber from this land. I didn't replant it, strategically replant it, but trees just started growing. What would a landowner, what if there's landowners in the call in that scenario where they kind of have this land that's in limbo? It's not really, it hasn't been cleared for 6 or 7 years, and there's scrub oak growing on it, things like that. Is there anything that a landowner can do in that scenario to get their land to qualify for your program in 3 or 4 years?
If it's been allowed to naturally regenerate, not really. Again, that would count as enough forest cover to disqualify, in the last 10 years to disqualify. That's a huge thing to say here. So you saw, I think, my second or third slide where we had the picture of the planting crew going through in Ohio. There were a lot of shrubs on that property. But almost 100% of those were autumn olive, which is a really nasty woody invasive we have here on the East Coast. And that has a way of growing on really low quality soil, so it can tend to take over these abandoned mine lands. Those don't count as native forest cover in the past 10 years. So it depends what's growing back, right? If you did a timber harvest and you had regeneration in mind and you're getting native forest growing back, then that's great. We don't have a whole lot of work to do. If you had some other use on your property, or your timber harvest left nothing but invasives behind, then that's an area where we'd have to do an assessment, but it definitely could be eligible, depending on how long ago that harvest was and depending on what the vegetation is currently, and since the harvest or the deforestation event. So site by site, I hope that makes sense, because it can be a bit of a complex answer, but I think removing and replacing invasive species is a whole separate benefit I haven't even talked about of our program that's really valuable on especially these degraded sites, or sites that have just been kind of left untouched for a long time, that are growing the wrong kind of stuff. So yeah, that's another consideration with us.
I think the summary there is, if there's a landowner out there wondering if their land would qualify, it's in the limbo type situation, the answer is to pick up the phone and call you. or send
Yeah.
you an email, right? So that
Yeah,
you can look at it
absolutely.
at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, 100%. I spend all day looking at aerials and assessing land. So that's something me and my team are more than happy to do for you. Again, like it could, even if you don't have, if you don't have 300 acres, if you're somewhere close, if you have some stuff growing but you don't know what it is, if you're just trying to figure out what all is going on with this program and you want some more detail after today, more than happy to have a conversation with any of you.
Well, very good. I think that was very thorough. Again, anybody who is interested in the things Jonathan had to say, Living Carbon, amazing company. You can contact them directly. You post listings on Landgate, it does get in front of Living Carbon, but also gets in front of a bunch of different other types of carbon developers. If your land doesn't fit this specific type of carbon credit, it's fine. There might be a different carbon developer out there, or there might be a solar company or a battery storage company or some other completely different type of resource that might be interested in talking to you about your properties. So, Jonathan, again, thank you very much. Karen, do you want to give a sign off? I think we're getting close to the top of the hour. So,
Yeah, I'll just reiterate, there might be a few other questions here that y'all asked us. I do think who's best to answer that will be Jonathan. So please reach out to him. I love working with him. He's a pleasure and a delight to speak to. Thank you so much again. Yeah, right back to you for joining us. And I look forward to all of where these future conversations are going to go.
awesome. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Mhm.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.